So welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. I'm Philip Brady, and I'm delighted to be joined by a friend, colleague, mentor, fellow coach, chum, all the above, Mr. MJ Lennon. You're welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So glad you finally got me on here.
Likewise.
A little bit raging that I wasn't the first guest on here. I'm just kidding.
You'll be number 10 actually. So you're a decade one.
I'll take that then. I'll take that, absolutely. Yeah, it's an honor to be here, mate. And I really love what you're doing so far with this here. I think it is going to add so much value to the listener's life. It is unbelievable. And I'm proud of you, dude.
Thank you. Likewise. And thanks for being here. So the intent, Lenny, is really with this that people could be beside you in a queue in Sainsbury's or Tesco and not realize how inspiring you are to other people. And so what I'm trying to help people understand is like they can be inspiring to other people as well. So by telling the stories of people like you and I who may seem ordinary, but are actually doing extraordinary things, I want to try and inspire people to think a little bit bigger and be that own hero in their own story and figure out ways that they can do that for other people then as well.
Amazing. Love it. And hopefully I can deliver for you, mate.
Yeah, never in doubt. So tell us, anybody listening, what it is that you're up to, I guess, at the moment in your life, Lenny. What's going on in this chapter for you?
So the current chapter in my life, I suppose, is trying to balance being a father and a businessman and a husband and a leader, a brother, son. And I think that's a big thing for everyone, is trying to balance all of those things. And oh yeah, just recently I became a jiu-jitsu competitor as well. So yeah, I'm trying to balance life much like everyone is. In my business, the current chapter is we've just recently franchised out my business model. So it's now gone global just recently. So we've got a franchise in Lithuania, in Glasgow, in Dublin and Donegal, and of course our headquarters in Belfast. I teach fitness professionals. Well, I teach people to become fitness professionals, for anyone that has never been introduced to my good self before. And I've been doing that pretty successfully for the last 7 years. I think we have brought something different, or at least I hope we've brought something different to the fitness industry in terms of the education that people get when they first experienced the fitness industry, which for me historically wasn't great. My business was very much born out of frustration because of what I got as an entry-level education whenever I first got into the fitness industry 11 years ago now. So yeah, we've been doing that. I own a gym, a really successful gym in Belfast city centre. Me and my business partner, PJ. So I've got my gym, I've got my academy. I also coach and consult other fitness professionals with your good self, Philip. And yeah, now I have created the ECA franchise, which is just another continuation and evolution of my business. So yeah, I'm very much enjoying the process of that right now. For me, someone actually asked me this the other day, is the franchise about the legacy of the business? And I was like, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. Because for me, that's the most important phase in business. And I suppose that's the phase in business I'm in now, which is always cycles. You know, you always go through your scarcity phase, and then you start to see a level of abundance. And then eventually you get into a phase of legacy where you start to think about the impact that the business can have. And I think that's the current cycle that I'm in with a couple of businesses, but then others are in different cycles and different seasons, but it's all fun and games, man. I just see it as a big game these days.
Nice. I never knew it was born from frustration.
Very much so. Yeah.
I didn't know that. And maybe, so let me flip it a little bit. What's it now born from? Like, what has it evolved to?
I love that question because there can be so many drivers at different times. And it's funny because people ask, what's your purpose? What's the reason for doing what you do? And I generally think that it can evolve. It doesn't need to stay the same. It definitely doesn't need to stay the same. I mean, I think starting my journey way back was a little bit of ego, I should say. I think it was down to that, and a little bit of ego and a little bit of competitiveness as well. And not so much competing with one particular individual, it was competing with a made up individual, right? Just someone in my mind that was doubting me and saying, oh, you can't do this or you can't do this. I was like, I'll prove you wrong. Even though there was no one necessarily saying that to me, I was proving someone wrong. I don't know who. And I suppose that in a way that was my ego a little bit, but it was a good driver. I feel it was a good driver. And so then as I broke into the fitness industry, like I went straight in and opened up a facility. I didn't wait for anything. I didn't wait for permission. I was just like, okay, well, I want to open up a gym, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'd done that, and I generally didn't feel that there was enough support there for people like me. I didn't think there was enough guidance, enough mentorship. Certainly there wasn't as an abundance of information as what there is today out there, which I think is an awesome thing for a lot of fitness professionals. So yeah, I think I was frustrated a little bit by that process with hindsight. And I look back and I was like, that could be done a whole lot better for people who want to take that journey, who want to have an impact through their fitness business. And I think they could be better informed. So I was a little bit frustrated by that. And I said, you know what, if it frustrates me, well, then it's a problem that can be solved. And I'm all about solving problems. So I decided then to go ahead and do that.
And the bin men I've pulled up outside, so that's why I went on mute. But I really like the purpose doesn't need to stay the same. So I think lots of people try and find this single purpose in their life, and they forget that it can change, it can evolve, it can adapt. It's not this one purpose forever that you're stuck with. So of course you never want to find that. You want to chase it. But whereas it's the same that I get asked all the time, and you get asked all the time, what's the best training split? What's your training split? And I get asked all the time, what's the best question? It's like, there's no best. It evolves over time. And the best question sometimes is, tell me more. What else? Do you know what I mean? So it's the same for your training split, just something you can do consistently that makes you feel good, right? There's no best.
Absolutely, mate. There's no number one purpose. It evolves all the time. If problems evolve all the time, well, then solutions evolve all the time. And essentially, whenever you are chasing your purpose, you are solving a problem. That's exactly what it is. But if the problem evolves and the solution evolves, well, then the purpose has to evolve as well. And it's weird because I think people spend so much time looking for it, and I don't think that you can find it. I think it evolves over time, and I think it's just organic, as in like everything happens for a reason, and you'll come across these things. And I think the most important thing is that you give yourself an opportunity to have opportunities to actually solve problems. When you look for the thing to solve and you get after that, well, then your purpose will grow from that, and it'll just come to you organically, and it'll just happen over time. There's no one trigger where you're going to wake up one day and go, oh, that's my purpose. At least I don't feel that way anyway. I've never experienced that. And I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone who has wakened up one day and they've been like, light bulb, yes, this is my purpose, I'm going to go after this. If they do, a lot of the time it can be short-lived because there's no foundation of building that purpose. There's no experience or anything like that. Like if someone wakens up tomorrow and they've never had anything to do with the fitness industry, and they're like, oh, do you know what? My purpose is to help people with their health and fitness. There's a high probability that they're going to fall off the wagon within a year of getting in there because it didn't happen through time. There was no foundation laid. There was no experience, in which case then it wasn't truly their purpose. You may call it a short-term passion, which are two different things.
And you could say that the person might feel more like an imposter or doubting themselves, literally because they don't have that evidence or foundation, like you're saying, of I am in the industry, I'm doing the work and have done the work, and now I know that this is closer to what it is that I want to do. So of course, what is it? Imposters don't get imposters. You can change that by building the foundation, but until you've done that, well, then you might not be as clear what it is that you actually want to do.
1,000,000%. And I've seen it like so many times. I've seen this so many times with people.
Yeah.
And I feel for people because I think it's always done with the best intentions. Like there's no doubt about that. But like one of the worst, I feel anyway, one of the absolute worst pieces of advice that anyone could give you is follow your passion. Right? I actually say it's like 4 P's. So it's passion, purpose, planning, and persistence. Persistence being the key word. If you truly want to
Well,
find
for you is steadiness, right? High
steadiness,
steadiness. Of
well, for
course you
me,
would say
yes,
that. Of
of
course you
course
would
I would
say
say that.
that.
Yes. So for your listeners, well, we'll not get into that. Well, we'll get into that. I suppose I'm a high S profile, like high steadiness, is in like I really value persistence and consistency. Like they're two things that are very top of my profile. So for me, persistence is the number one thing because I truly don't feel that you can find your passion, your true passion and your true purpose without being persistent at it. I just think it takes a little bit more digging.
What was the other P? Passion, persistence, purpose,
and planning.
Planning. See, learning every day. I'm
Learning
writing
every
this
day,
stuff
man.
down. Yeah, 100%. So when you were committing to that kind of fitness journey, born out of frustration, set up your own gym, was there ever any kind of hesitation that this is the right thing, or like were the people kind of telling you, nah, that's not for you, or like how did you? We'll get to what kept you moving forward anyway. But was there ever anything kind of holding you back, saying no, just stay safe, stay comfortable, stay doing what you were doing?
Yeah. So I think on a positive note, my wife was one of the main drivers of me going after the things that I wanted to do. There were people, and I don't think it was more out of love than out of spite. So there were people that were questioning my intentions, if you want to call it that, and telling me that I was maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but it was done out of love rather than anything else. For example, my father, and I worked with my father since I left school. I left school pretty early and I had zero qualifications, like nothing whatsoever. And I like actually sharing that with people. I don't mind whatsoever sharing that with people. I don't feel like it I don't feel like it's a negative thing, at least not for me personally, because I didn't like school whatsoever. I value movement. Like movement is another thing that is the very top of my core values. And school took that away from me. So for me, even from a very young age, sitting at a desk all day long and being told what to do and taking orders just didn't feel good. I absolutely hated it from a very young age. So I left school as soon as I could, and I went into a leadership role for my father at a very, very young age, way before I was ready. And I think it was a cross between, it was my father wanted me to do it because he trusted me most, and I wanted to do it as well because I wanted to gain my father's approval. So that then led me down the path of working for him. And obviously I was doing a good job for him. So he didn't want me to go. He didn't want me to leave. I think it was partly for myself because it was partly to do with our relationship, because he always wanted a relationship with me, at least a better one, because I grew up in a broken home. We didn't live together from I was a baby. So I think part of it was that he didn't want our relationship to break up. Even though it was a working relationship, it was still some kind of relationship. So it was partly fear. Plus, I was doing a great job for him, and I'll tell this to everyone. Like, I operated like I owned the place, even though, okay, it was my father's pub and everything else, but I operated like I was the owner, and I tried to take every bit of uh, every responsibility that I could to make his life easier, and also to improve my work ethic as well, I suppose. So yeah, I always had that work ethic, and my father didn't want that relationship to break down. So he was, again, coming from a place of love, questioning whether or not it was the right thing to do. At the time as well, I had just gotten married. So I was racking up responsibilities. Like, I had a car, mortgage, kids on the way, everything, you name it. Now, I had been working in the fitness industry part-time for a while before I decided to go and open up my own facility. But yeah, I actually remember whenever I went in to knock down the walls in my first facility, my wife Katrina rang me, and she was like, okay, so we're going to be expecting soon. Is this still what you want to do? And I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. Even more so now. Even more so, because I knew that I wouldn't be living a life that was true to myself if I didn't. And I didn't want to be bringing my children into the world on as a parent, not living a life that's true to myself, because what type of influence then would that have on my kids when they come into the world? So that was an even bigger push. Like, that didn't stop me. That just made matters worse, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it's fuel.
Yeah. So that was there was a lot of that in the early days. There was a lot of self-doubt as well. I mean, obviously, having all of those responsibilities, I started to question, am I doing the right thing? Am I going a little bit crazy? Like, what's going on? I've got a job for life here. Do I really need to walk away from it? I've got uh 2 weeks, 3 weeks holiday a year, guaranteed job for life, probably a bit of capital when my daddy eventually sells the bar, whatever it is. I could take over the bar someday, but I was just like, no. For anyone, I suppose, that knows that industry, they'll know of how tough it can be to deal with people when they're at their worst. And I generally see people when they're drunk at their worst. I think it can bring out the dark side of humans. And again, I truly believe that most people are inherently good, but I just think that sometimes in the environment and that type of influence on them, it can bring out the worst in them. So dealing with that for a long period of time at a very young age, it's a crash course in human nature. And you see that when you see so much darkness, and it is darkness in people, then you tend to say, you know what, I truly appreciate what I do today, even more so because I've experienced that.
Yeah. And I said that to you before about like not experiencing that much suffering. So I don't know if that limits my success, but it's exactly the same, that when you know and have a map of the dark, you actually have a wider perspective on what's good too, as long as you remind yourself to pay attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I'm grateful for it, because it is a crash course in human nature. So you see, like, from a very young age, I learned to deal with people and de-escalate situations. And when you can deal with those types of scenarios, which, by the way, for anyone that thinks that I'm exaggerating, you're dealing with people who truly want to harm each other.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people who want to kill each other.
Yeah.
Like, that is probably the worst type of scenario that anyone can be put into, having to try to de-escalate situations like that, especially at a very young age, which is what I was doing. Now, did it happen every day? Absolutely not. But it was a pretty regular occurrence. So, that has a lasting impact on you. And when you see those types of things week in, week out, month in, month out, and when you're dealing with this type of person consistently, over time it wears very thin, and it does have an impact on you. And yeah, for me, I was like, right, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to show people the light in other ways, instead of trying to, de-escalate situations like this. I'm pretty sure that we could solve the problem before trying to solve it whenever it's already happened. So this is what I try to do today.
I love it. It's really cool. And I don't think people realize the energy that can come from things that you don't want to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, big time.
So it sounds like your dad was supportive, even though if it was a little bit off, maybe it would be great if you stayed, but I know that it's better if you go kind of thing. And you're like Katrina then as well. So were there other kind of mentors as you were kind of committing to that journey that supported you, or kind of also kind of lighted the path ahead of you? Because you could say it's like navigating in a dark room when you don't have a clue and it's new and it's totally different. So how did you get that support? Like, who was it that was kind of lighting the path, and how have you paid attention to those kind of mentors since then as well?
Yes. So number one was my father, without a doubt. Even though he had zero experience in the fitness industry or anything like that, he's always been my biggest supporter as well. And even though there was fear of him, of our relationship breaking down, he still very much supported me, so much so that he allowed me to rent floor space three floors up in his pub, which was our first facility. And he always, I actually remember one time, I think it was like maybe 2 years into the journey, 3 years into the journey, and I was just like, oh, this is so tough. This is so tough. Like, this is absolutely brutal. And I think one of the main drivers for me as well was that because I was seeking so much of my father's approval, I also wanted him to know that my decision was a successful one.
Yeah.
Even though there was a lot of times that it wasn't.
Yes.
So for me, I remember one day saying, "Oh, right, fuck this. I'm gonna confide in my father right now." So I went to him and I said, "Like, I'm really struggling right now. This is so hard. Like, I just don't know what to do." And he said to me that I'm 22 years in the entrepreneurship now, and it never gets easier. And that was it. So I just I walked into him, and he was actually in the pub, and I just had this conversation with him, and I just wanted to tell someone.
Yeah.
And I suppose the last person that I wanted to tell this was my father.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the reason that I did go and tell him, because he was the last person that I wanted to tell. So it was like, if he's the last person that I want to tell this, well, then now he's the first person that I'm going to tell it. So I walked in and said, "I'm really struggling right now. This is so hard. And yeah, I just want to let you know." And he just said, "Yeah, I'm 20 years plus into it. It's always going to be that hard." And then I was like, I was okay after that. I was like, yeah, I'm not the only one. So yeah, I think my father, definitely. There were other mentors, although they wouldn't have known. Maybe if you call it an invisible mentor or a digital mentor, maybe there were other people there who were leading the way, but they just wouldn't have known that I was inspired by them. So I think there was a lot of that. And then, yeah, there was other, we're a family of entrepreneurs as well. So a lot of my uncles were supportive of me, even though they were questioning slightly my thought process, but they were definitely supportive. My wife, shout out to her. She's always been there. She's always been the main individual that's always pushed me to, not pushed me, but just supported me to do better. And again, the extent of her influence, she'll never know either.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was it. But again, it has evolved. The more into business we've gotten, I've looked outside my family for influence, for mentorship, for guidance. And again, I think that's a natural progression as well.
Yeah. And what happens a lot of people as well is they go in, and like you say often, is you can't read the label from inside the bottle. So getting that external perspective literally widens what's possible, because the space in between you and somebody else is increased. So you can think wider than between your two ears. So it's so powerful having those people along the way, even just for company when it gets hard, right? And we forget that. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength that you can do that. But the other thing you said about going to your dad, wanting to go to him last, so you went to him first, reminds me you talking about inverted thinking and thinking nearly about the thing upside down, right? Because it's exactly living and embodying exactly the concept, right?
Yeah, that was exactly it, man. Like, yeah, that was it. It was the last person that I wanted to go to, so he became the first.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want him to know that I wasn't doing well. If you're seeking approval from someone, and especially in the way it happened, because we were working together and he very much seen us as a team and I was breaking up the team.
Yep.
And then to have my decision to do so fail, or potentially fail, or at least say I'm struggling with it, was a big thing for me, at least, or at least I had it built up in my head as a big thing. You know, it probably wasn't to him. I'm pretty sure he was comfortable by that stage, and no matter what I said to him, he would have been fine. But yeah, it's just different when your internal dialogue is much different than the real world, isn't it?
100%. Don't. This is why we argue with reality and wonder why we struggle.
Yeah. So much so, man.
Tell me about some of the challenges that you encountered along the way. So that kind of self-doubt, but some of the ways that you were thinking maybe about not giving up, but like saying it's really hard. Like, what were some of those things over the last like 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Long time.
For
You're really old, aren't you?
I am really old now. So yeah, well, I have been, I would say, so I left school when I was 15, went straight into a leadership role when I was 17.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of responsibility. I lost a good friend, a work colleague who I took a lot of, again, responsibility for, or I felt, because I was in a leadership role within my work, I lost a friend, and that was a major challenge, and that was a major turning point in my decision to leave that industry as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that was a major turning point. So I love sharing this story now. So whenever I was, I mean, actually slightly older, so this might have been when I was in my early 20s then. So shout out to Joe O'Neill, absolute legend of a man. So he came to work with us at my father's pub, and after he was working on a shift that I got him to cover for me, and after his shift, he went out for a couple of drinks with friends, and when they were making their way home, he walked into the taxi depot next door to the pub, got into an altercation, fell outside it, hit his head pretty badly, and he died from it. Now Joe had, I think at the time Joe was 45, 46, something. Can't remember his exact age, but he had a couple of kids here in Belfast. He had a couple of kids in Glasgow as well, which is where he was from originally. And he was an absolute legend of a man, such a nice man. And that hit me pretty hard. Like, and I don't remember if it was at his funeral. It was in and around, because obviously I was speaking to his wife and stuff afterwards, and there was just so many times where it was just so painful. And I remember seeing his kids. I remember seeing them a few times, and the times that I seen them, I was like, this is horrible. Not only is it horrible for their family, it's horrible for any future generations that are impacted in this way. This could be my kids. And that was a big driver for me and a big turning point where I made the decision that I wasn't going to work in this industry anymore and deal with this type of trauma or pain, if you want to call it that. So then I decided, you know what, I'm going to do the complete opposite of what I feel this industry is giving, which fitness has always been a big part of my life anyway. From I was so young, I always wanted to, I started out wanting to be a PE teacher. So, and this was whenever I was like primary 7, my father asked me what did I want to be. I was like, I think I want to be a PE teacher. I'm not too far off the mark. So yeah, fitness was always a big part of it for me. So that was the only way that I could solve this problem. And then that led me down the path of the fitness industry then. And that was a big turning point for me. That was a massive challenge. But at the same time, it was a big driver as well. Having that type of purpose as a driver is a huge one. And as I say, you said this earlier on about understanding the dark. Well, they were dark times. So again, for me, any experience that I have now in the fitness industry or any struggle that I'm up against or anything like that whatsoever, there's nothing that I'll ever deal with that was as bad as that. So it gives you a different perspective as well.
But I think you were going to share the story as well. Do you want to tell how that story comes full circle?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Joe's kids, they were very young at the time, and having seen them and seen the impact that was going to have on their life was one of the main drivers for me moving into the fitness industry, which I did. And I opened up the gym. We worked there for a few years. We expanded the gym a few times. We moved into the academy, which was very much born out of frustration. And that took a while to build up, but eventually, again, we got there. A lot of work involved. And we now have 20 to 25 students come through every single course. And a couple of years ago, we brought in a group of students, and on the first day of every course, I get the students up to tell a little story about themselves, a little bit about their background and everything else. So we were sitting in the classroom, and I got the students up and they were taking turns. And next minute, this young lad gets up and he starts to tell a little bit about his story. And I was like, this is very familiar. And then he said, so I lost my father when I was very young, not too far from here, just across the road. And then he started to tell the story about how he lost his father, and it dawned on me, and I get shivers now even just thinking about the moment that it dawned on me, because neither of us knew who the other person was. But lo and behold, it was Joe's son. He didn't know me, I didn't know him, but I knew who he was as soon as he told the story. And I was like, holy shit. And actually, I still carry it today. In my wallet, I had one of Joe's mask cards, and I didn't even say anything to him. I just stood up and handed him the mask card, and he took it off me, and he was looking at me, and he was like, what is going on? What, you got my daddy's mask card? And I just started crying, and I gave him a hug, and I was like, you have no idea who I am, do you? And he was like, no. And I was like, your daddy used to work for me. In fact, he was working with me the night he was killed. And then I could see him trying to process it. And I was like, you don't even know, but you're the reason we're all sitting here today. And that's powerful. I was like, you're the reason that this gym exists, this academy exists, and everything that we have here today is because of you and your sibling. So yeah, that was pretty powerful. And it just gave, like, it just made so much sense, because now I had this young lad who I seen all of those years ago, who encouraged my decision to move into this industry, who was now in front of me on the same journey. Right. And he was like, oh, I want to get into the fitness industry because I want to help people. And obviously he's experienced a lot of trauma in his life, and he wants to help other people not go through that as well. So it was just unbelievable that the two of us were on exactly the same journey and ended up in this room at the same time. And still today, he's working in the fitness industry. He's absolutely killing it, and I'm so proud of him. He's such a great lad. But it just, yeah, it gave It gave a lot of closure,
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah. So it's a powerful story.
Mm. If that kind of painful event was the reason for starting, what keeps you moving forward? Like when it gets hard, when it's not the stuff that you want, falling on your persistence and steadiness, right? But what is it that motivates that forward, if that makes sense? Because it's a different motivator nearly. One is away from that, you could say, or because of that. But is there a towards as well?
Oh yeah, there's a towards. I think once you have built up a lot of evidence of success, what I mean by that is seeing seeing the impact of what you do has on people. And I know we're going towards, but at the same time, I also think that if I don't do what I do, well, then there's a lot of people who are losing out. So I think seeing that as well, and well, I know people say this all the time, but for my kids, that this is another huge driver for me. I think every child will see their parent as a superhero, and I truly want to be the best version of myself that I can for my kids. And the other thing, then, I suppose, and I've said this to you before, this line is hell on earth is meeting the man that you could have become. So for me, I very much am driven by that. I'm very much driven by that. And I just, yeah, I think it could be fear, but I think fear is a great emotional driver as well. I just don't want to get to the end of my life and having not lived a full life, having not experienced all the things that I want to experience, accomplished all the things that I want to accomplish, and impacted the amount of people that I want to impact. So I think for now, and you could package those up and call it legacy, because that's essentially what it is, and that's the only thing that will be left when you're gone. That's the main driver for me now, is just making sure that I live life to the fullest. And how I do that is through my business and through the experiences that I have in this meat wagon right here.
By meat wagon, just in case people don't know, you mean the body that you inhabit. And Lenny's a tank. Lenny is who I want to be when I grow up. When I get my shoulder fixed, I'm
Yes.
coming for that body.
The body that I inhabit. Yeah, I need to stop saying meat wagon.
They say, look after your body. It's your home until you die.
Mm,
And I'm like, that's crazy. The body keeps
is,
score.
The body keeps
score, right?
score, man. Yeah. I just want to get as much out of it as I can as well. So I suppose for your listeners, and this is a little bit of a bigging up myself. I'm thinking about now competing internationally in jiu-jitsu, because I've competed internationally as an amateur boxer, and I've competed internationally as a kettlebell sport athlete. So I think if I do that in jiu-jitsu as well, there are three pretty tough sports to be competing internationally in. So I'm like, I actually like the sound of that. And for me, that's just, it's nothing to do with ego whatsoever. That's for me. That's for no one else. I think to myself, if I can do that, that's getting a lot out of the meat wagon, isn't it? And that's a lot of experiences, and that's a lot of accomplishments as well. So yeah, I think I like the idea of that.
Nice. In the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, there's European Championships in Italy or France, I think, in January. So yeah, I'm contemplating that.
Amazing.
Yeah, just try to get the most out of it.
100%.
Before it truly breaks down.
Before?
Before it truly breaks down.
I don't think it'll break down. Not with cars every day, right?
Cars every damn day.
Tell us about some of the lessons that you learned on your journey. Like, what stands out as like maybe a couple of things that you think if more people knew, it would help?
Number one, you can't fail if you don't quit. I say this to entrepreneurs all the time, because obviously you and I do some coaching and consultancy for other fitness entrepreneurs, and they've always got first world problems. There will always be first world problems, because that's exactly what they are, by the way. They're first world problems a lot of the time. Like, the problems we experience in our life are minimal compared to what there is out
You're
there.
scared of posting on social media, really?
Yeah, exactly. I know. Like, come on.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. It's like they are minimal. Like, they truly do not matter, right? So the um the biggest lesson is that you can't fail if you don't quit. That's the number one thing. I can't fail if you don't quit. The other thing, then, I say this to entrepreneurs all the time, like, because people will come to me and they're like, "Oh, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve this problem?" And I was like, you just keep going. Like, if you think about, especially entrepreneurship, as I heard Alex Hormozy say this, now he referred to it in baseball, but if you think about it in football, which probably more people will be aware of, is you have a penalty kick, right? And you have infinite opportunities to score, right? So there's no one's going to come along and say, you have to stop taking your kicks now, right? So in that case, if you think about it, if you keep on walking up and taking a penalty, sooner or later, you're going to score, right? So the big lesson is, don't quit, right? Stay curious. One of the biggest killers in business, especially, is self-consciousness, right? I'm afraid of missing the penalty if I look bad in front of everyone who sees me miss it, right? That's just self-consciousness. But if you just step up every single time and say, I wonder what will happen if I take another kick, well, then that's curiosity. So allow curiosity to guide you. And sooner or later, like, it doesn't matter how bad you are, you're going to get better if you keep on taking penalty kicks, right? So if you allow curiosity to lead you and guide you, well, then you're going to see progress sooner or later, and eventually you're going to score. But the key is to not let self-consciousness take over. And again, I keep on saying the word, to be persistent as well.
I heard you will fail until you succeed. So get used to failing. Get used to it not working, because literally that's what it is. Until it works, it's not going to work. Right?
100%. Like, I could go down a massive rabbit hole with this here conversation.
Same.
I could go down a massive rabbit hole with it, but I think you just hit the nail on the head.
Because I think it's Jocko says, train for the difficult.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
It's a grind until the end, and then it's rewarding on completion. So and it should be rewarding along the way. Like, there's an element of enjoy the journey and growing and progressing, and that, don't get too fixated with it, but find ways to end or close the thing so you can complete it and feel some satisfaction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always that dichotomy, isn't it, of being placed in the grind, but then also seeing the rewards from that as well, and just giving yourself a pat on the back and saying you're in it. Yeah. You're in the arena. That's the most important thing. Yeah, you're in the arena. That's it. You've learned more lessons than the people that are sitting on the sidelines. So give yourself a pat on the back for that.
Yeah. When you return home now versus who you were when you left your dad's pub, let's say, how do you show up differently because of this journey that you've been on?
I show up a lot more empathetic. I think a lot more content. So I think using the word content, a lot of the time people would associate it with I'm done, right? You're content. Oh, you're content with what you've achieved. Now it's time just to wrap it up and you know, get the slippers and pipe on and all. I'm content. I think I'm content with the journey. I'm content with the decisions that have made along the way. Not all of them have been perfect decisions. Some of them have been absolute disasters, but all learning experiences as well. I think that being the key thing is I'm more content. Whereas whenever I was a younger guy, I think there was a lot of, I basically had a chip on my shoulder because I didn't achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. Zero accomplishments, zero experiences, wasn't impacting people. And because I actually have decided to follow my heart and take that journey, well, then it brings me a lot of contentness, knowing that I've learned all of the lessons from doing that. And yeah, I look back now and couldn't imagine having not become an entrepreneur, having not moved into the fitness industry, having not created some of the businesses that I've created, having not worked with some of the people. Like, I just couldn't imagine having not taken that journey. So I think that brings me a lot of contentness, number one. How I show up now, I suppose I think that's on a more grand scale. How I show up now on a day-to-day basis is I like to think that I leave people better than I found them, or when they find me. So if I can, I think I'm waking up every day and think, right, well, who can I positively impact today? So if it's your listeners, if it's you, if it's whoever I'm rolling with later on in jiu-jitsu, like if I can leave that person better than I found them daily, well then, you know, that's the win, right? That's it. Like for me, that is the absolute win. So, and again, that gives me a lot of fulfillment as well. So I think those two things, yeah.
And people don't track that. So they could be stacking all of this foundation under them, but they don't track it. And these things are happening for us. We just don't pay attention to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, or maybe we just don't appreciate it. You don't appreciate, like, one thing that you could say to someone today, or one thing that you could do for someone, and it could be a small thing. You know, for example, when a newbie comes into SBG in jiu-jitsu, I get that they're nervous and that they're a little bit scared because they don't know any of the moves and they don't know the vocabulary and they don't quite know what's going on. So for me, I always go out of my way to look at the new faces, walk up to them, give them a fist bump and say, how you doing? You okay? Is this your first day? Is there anything you need? Just give me a shout. If I can help you out with anything, let me know. And for me, that first impression is leaving a lasting impact, because they'll probably remember that this scary looking guy with the tattoos and the bald head come up to them in their first day of jiu-jitsu and made them feel welcome. That's it. Like for me, that's complete fulfillment. If I can make my kids laugh on a daily basis and I can enjoy an hour together, because they're trying to learn jiu-jitsu right now as well.
So
and every night they're coming to me and they're like, Daddy, can you show us this new move? And what happens if I do this here? And they have so much fun with it. And they laugh so hard when I'm teaching them it. So, you know, for me, like that's life. Like that stuff far outweighs any financial reward, any materialistic thing that you can have. Like that is life right there. And if I can do that daily, then I'm winning.
What qualities do you think make people heroes?
So this is really interesting. So have you heard of this guy, Andrew Tate?
Yeah.
So
I don't know why.
yeah, I I've just seen a few people write about this guy recently, and he's very polarizing, as in some people are seeing him as a hero and some people are seeing him as a villain. And I think for me personally, I think a lot of what he does and says can be degrading towards people. Now, I can see how men, especially, could be inspired by him because he's successful and he has a lot of money and he's on private jets and he's on speedboats and he wears suits and smokes cigars and has all of these materialistic things and everything else. And on the surface, he looks successful. But to me personally, I don't see that as success. If someone has to base their success off someone else losing, well then I don't see that. I don't respect that. I don't respect that game. And I think, and again, this may be a strong, maybe a strong word to use, but I think people who have him as their hero are weak, right? And they're weak because they need to go to that extreme to find a hero, right? Heroes don't need to be people who run other people down or anything like that. In fact, it's the complete opposite. So for me, a hero is someone who leaves people better than they found them, right? Not runs them down, regardless of whatever position they're in or whatever title they've got. And that could be someone who you walk past on the street, someone who's a father who's rearing 3 kids by himself, or a mother who's rearing 3 kids by herself, who's doing the best with what they've got. For me, that's a real hero, someone who has, I'll use my my wife's mother for an example. She has 6 kids, and she practically raised them by herself in a council estate in a 3-bedroom house, and she had very little, but she done the best with what she has, right? And her perspective on life, like how she views life, like she has so much wisdom, it is beyond belief. That's a hero. Like, it's not someone who is degrading other people because they're on a private jet and they do all this here. Like, for me, I think people should be really careful about the heroes they choose. I think that's a big message. And that, yeah, my definition of a hero is probably people who want to leave people better than they found them.
Was there any questions I didn't ask you that I should have?
When's the next time we're going for a dinner date, maybe?
What would your answer be?
Whenever I find the time to actually. Any questions that you should have asked me but didn't? We covered a lot there. We went pretty deep on that one. I think we got it all.
Have you any questions you want to ask me?
Have I any questions that I want to ask you? I think I have a question for your listeners. So, what is the cost of not taking action on some of the information that you've got today? Right? Someone asked me this recently, what questions they wish people would ask me. And I said, I should have said, it's not the question that they ask me, it's the question that they ask themselves is what matters, because the question that they ask themselves is way more impactful, because the better questions you ask yourself, the better outcomes you will see. So then the question for your listeners is, what is the cost of not taking action on the information that you get from this podcast and from the people on it? if someone shares a piece of knowledge, education, or information with you, and you do nothing with it, that's going to enhance your accomplishments, experiences, and the people around you, what is the cost?
Mhm.
Right. So I think you have to think about that and let that be the thing that drives you towards doing the shit that you want to do.
MJ Lennon, thanks for being on the Everyday Heroes podcast.
Absolute pleasure, my man. Loved it.
Likewise.